What you're about to read documents the single most catastrophic natural disaster in recorded human history, a meteorological event so devastating that it nearly triggered global nuclear warfare, yet remains largely unknown to the general public. The year was 1970. Within the warm waters of a modest bay situated along India's coastline, atmospheric conditions began shifting ominously, signaling the birth of what would become nature's most merciless assault on humanity. Meanwhile, 800 miles to the north, the inhabitants of East Pakistan continued their routine existence, completely oblivious to the lethal forces gathering strength in the distant maritime depths. November 8, 1970 marked the initial detection of slowly rotating cloud formations deep within the Bay of Bengal, early indicators that a minor tropical disturbance was beginning to organize itself into something far more sinister. Within 24 hours on November 9th, this atmospheric system underwent rapid intensification, transforming from scattered clouds into a legitimate tropical storm. The mechanism for hurricane or cyclone development had been set in motion. By November 10th, the storm continued gaining strength while establishing a frighteningly precise trajectory. Meteorological observers monitoring radar systems watched in growing alarm as the system's path pointed directly toward East Pakistan's vulnerable coastline, advancing at an unprecedented velocity. November 11th witnessed the final metamorphosis. The tropical storm achieved maximum classification as a severe cyclone, now possessing the destructive capability of nature's most violent phenomena. The cyclone maintained its relentless advance toward populated areas with no indication of weakening. Ironically, most coastal residents remained indifferent to the approaching threat, as storms of considerable magnitude were routine occurrences in their region. However, what remained completely unknown to every living soul at that moment was that this seemingly ordinary collection of swirling clouds would prove dramatically different from any previous meteorological event. Its capacity for destruction would exceed all historical precedents. Recognized infamously as history's deadliest and most devastating natural catastrophe, the Bhola Cyclone represents the ultimate example of what occurs when optimal conditions for destruction align perfectly. Upon reaching peak intensity, the true danger of the Bhola Cyclone became apparent. Drawing from Scott Carney and Jason McLean's comprehensive documentation in The Vortex, this account reveals that this was far from a simple tale of random meteorological violence. Instead, it chronicles how a single cyclone evolved into a force capable of triggering global annihilation. The storm was approaching rapidly, but a critical problem persisted. Coastal populations remained remarkably unconcerned about the impending disaster. Under normal circumstances, when confronted with such a massive storm system, meteorological experts and radar technicians would be frantically activating warning systems, urging civilians to seek immediate shelter and prepare emergency measures. Instead, there was complete silence. The truth reveals a more sinister reality. It wasn't that East Pakistanis underestimated the storm's severity. They possessed no knowledge whatsoever of its existence or approach. The fatal communication breakdown. With a storm of this magnitude, complete failure of emergency notification systems wouldn't merely constitute a minor oversight, it would prove absolutely lethal. In 1970, East Pakistan lacked adequate emergency infrastructure. Detection equipment, warning sirens, and virtually any system capable of identifying and alerting civilians to deadly storms were scarce and inadequately distributed throughout the region. Additionally, Pakistanis possessed no effective protocols for managing storms once they made landfall. Strangely, surrounding nations possessed such capabilities. India, for instance, maintained sufficient weather detection infrastructure and had identified the storm from its earliest formation stages. Indian meteorologists had been tracking the system's progression toward Pakistan throughout its development. However, Due to recent military conflicts between India and Pakistan, political tensions between the nations meant India had little motivation to warn Pakistani authorities of the approaching catastrophe. Pakistani officials received no storm-related information from any external source. Obviously, this would create massive problems for East Pakistani populations, being unable to prepare for such a storm and facing impact without any protective measures was, to put it mildly, absolutely terrifying. But what if the timing of the storm's arrival would prove to be their least significant concern? The lunar conspiracy. Around November 12th, the darkened night sky harbored the most dangerous element of this entire catastrophe, a complete lunar phase. Why would a full moon represent the most hazardous aspect of this storm? The answer explains why this storm escalated to an entirely different level of destructive capability. It's the reason this storm holds the distinction of being history's most dangerous meteorological event. The explanation lies in tidal mechanics. During full moon phases, lunar gravitational forces cause all tides to rise approximately 20% higher than normal. Coastal water levels increase dramatically, with elevated tides already presenting danger and water reaching significantly higher shore elevations. The Bhola Cyclone gained enormous destructive advantage, enabling the cyclone to literally transport oceanic waters inland and catastrophically inundate East Pakistani territory. The Bhola Cyclone was approaching at literally the most devastating possible moment. The inadequate warning. However, populations finally received disaster warnings on the 12th. After recognizing the genuine threat posed by this monstrous cyclone, Pakistan's meteorological department issued an official report and broadcast radio warnings about the approaching system. But the meteorological department possessed limited intelligence because their information originated from central Pakistan. Central Pakistani authorities had implemented a new storm classification system, a 1 to 4 scale with 4 representing maximum danger. Meanwhile, East Pakistan continued using their traditional 1 to 10 classification system, with 10 indicating maximum threat level. When radio transmissions announced in fragmented language great dangers ahead, scale 4, civilians were not only confused but dismissed the warning, assuming 4 was significantly less threatening than 10. They had no understanding that 4 represented catastrophic conditions. Unfortunately, a simple radio broadcast would prove insufficient to motivate most residents. Most people wouldn't take the storm seriously based solely on a basic radio message. Historical context and political negligence. Why was there such inadequate preparation for this storm? This wasn't the first time such a system had threatened the region. Previously, multiple deadly hurricanes in the area had killed thousands of people. Due to these horrible disasters, the central Pakistani government had contacted American authorities for assistance in developing improved storm preparedness protocols. However, due to political complications between West and East Pakistan, the central Pakistani government failed to implement many crucial plans they should have established for East Pakistan. East Pakistan was receiving unfair treatment in virtually every aspect of disaster preparedness. At this point, it was already too late to implement corrective measures. The Bhola Cyclone was about to strike East Pakistani shores. The horrifying cyclone was approaching landfall. Geographic vulnerability. To compound all these factors, East Pakistan, now known as Bangladesh, is an extremely low-lying coastal nation. Its terrain barely rises above water level. The country sits only 33 feet above sea level on average. During regular high tides alone, water floods significant portions of the country. Hundreds of thousands of people reside along the nation's coastline, hundreds of thousands of people who had no comprehension of how devastating the cyclone's impact would prove. The Night of Terror. On November 12th, the Bhola Cyclone struck the hundreds of thousands of coastal residents with absolute ferocity. As the cyclone approached land, the sun had completely set, bringing pitch-black darkness across the region. Many people would be immediately overwhelmed by the pure, raw, disgusting power of a cyclone that had finally reached peak intensity. The Bhola Cyclone had finally reached the shore. The devastating impact. Rising waters, absurd wind velocities, rain that stung like thousands of needles, and storm surge flooding reached upward of 33 feet in certain areas. Houses were completely obliterated. Floodwaters and ocean surges reached the rooftops of most structures, creating pure catastrophe for anyone located near the coastline. No safety existed. No method of countering this storm was available, and no one had advanced knowledge of its approach. Thousands of families struggled toward the upper levels of their homes. Many prayed their houses were sufficiently tall, but unfortunately, adequately tall structures were uncommon. Most houses were entirely consumed by the sea. Manahar's testimony. In Manihar, one of hundreds of isolated islands along the affected shoreline, a man named Hai and his family struggled to reach their home's upper level as floodwaters poured in, rising by the minute. Fortunately, Hai's residence was among the more robust and solid structures in the area, and it possessed a second floor. Most other homes lacked second stories and were far less structurally sound. The area was severely unprepared for flooding of 20 feet in height. Hai and his family waited as they watched the flood slowly rise above their second floor steps. With time running out and flood levels rising faster, Hai realized the flood would completely engulf their two-story home. He understood that the massive 20-foot storm surge would overwhelm everything along the coast and beyond. Safety within homes was not possible. The only method of surviving this storm was to be nowhere near its path. His family was sobbing. Even the men cried and screamed. All of this had occurred within 8 minutes for a family that had been told a minor cyclone would strike, a family whose home was more than half a mile from the shoreline. Eventually, Hai and his brother struggled to reach the house's roof, hoping to get everyone up there away from the rising waters. But when they reached the roof, they were battered by the heaviest storm imaginable. 155 miles per hour winds and rain stung the men like BBs against their skin, and the roof bent and creaked from just 2 people standing on it. Having the entire family up there was completely impossible. However, in a split second, Hai noticed they had a massive, tall, and strong coconut tree positioned 2 feet from the house. His idea was for everyone to jump to the tree and cling to it. Everyone would be able to make the jump. It was a 2-foot distance that even his grandmother could manage. Hai shouted his plan to the others and said he would attempt the jump first as a test. But in the middle of the night with zero visibility, this jump was extremely dangerous. Regardless, he went for it. Hai leaped through the storm to the coconut tree and successfully made it. So he yelled, "I made it! I made it!" to the others, hoping they would follow him. No response came. Assuming the storm noise was too loud, he yelled again, but heard a wave crash over the house's roof. Hai, still hoping his family could jump, waited while continuously yelling, "I made it." The wave struck against the roof with unrelenting force, and the water continued rising. Hai called out to his mother, desperate for any response. With his cries transforming from triumph and survival to despair, Hai called out to God. The endless night. For the next hour or so, Hai clung violently to the swaying palm tree, grinding his arms into the tree bark, absolutely exhausted from holding on for hours in insane winds and rain. Hai nearly gave into the waters below to join his family. He knew he could hold on no longer. His muscles were exhausted, and he had endured enough of this storm. Hai wanted to join his family, but just before he was about to surrender, the storm completely and utterly stopped. Absolutely confused, Hai looked around. Everything came to a halt. The strong winds became a gentle breeze, the rain turned to a light shower, and everything calmed. Hai was in the eye of the storm. Looking around, all he saw was water, but debris and dead bodies floating everywhere. The only significant landmarks were trees and the top 3 feet of Manihar High School, a 3-story building. But Hai heard his uncle and aunt yelling for help, trapped in their home, so he jumped into the flood and swam to their house. He climbed on top and ripped a hole into the roof, helping them escape. He asked where everyone was, and his uncle yelled that they were all gone. The storms return. But in true and utter cruelty and indifference, the storm would not wait for Hai and his uncle to mourn their family's deaths. Because somewhere far over the ocean, an angry growl presented itself across the sky. Like a group of diesel trucks starting simultaneously, the storm had returned. Hai and his uncle gripped tightly onto tall trees as gusts of wind struck back at 150 miles per hour. They dug their scratched and cut arms into the tree bark, holding on for dear life, and remained there in the winds and rain, gripping as hard as they could throughout the entire night. At 4 a.m, the cyclone's outer edges passed Manahar, and Hai collapsed onto the faint bits of his roof that finally emerged from the water. He lay there completely motionless, with the bodies of his entire family floating in the water below him. Hai had survived, but he was exhausted, broken, and all he wanted was to die. The aftermath. After the Bhola Cyclone concluded, Hai's Manahar recorded that 40,000 of the 50,000 residents had perished. The floods receded, and hundreds of miles of destroyed territory became visible. Hundreds of thousands of bodies were washed out into the Bay of Bengal. 90% of all homes were destroyed. All of the millions of people along the shore and throughout the country of Bangladesh experienced the exact same ordeal as Hai, the flooding, clinging to trees, hoping for survival, and the lack of preparation due to insufficient information from central Pakistan. Everyone who survived was absolutely heartbroken and, understandably, beyond their core, absolutely furious at the central Pakistani government for the lack of information. The political conspiracy. But you're probably wondering how this led to nearly ending the world. The answer is much darker than you might imagine, and it begins right before the storm even struck. In West Pakistan, the head of government, Yahya Khan, made a terrifying decision during the cyclone. He deliberately chose not to provide aid or assistance for the storm to East Pakistan at all. He chose not to inform them of anything or help them in any way. Why? Because he believed East Pakistanis wouldn't vote for him in the upcoming election, so his solution was to eliminate as many people as possible so he wouldn't have to worry about unfavorable voters. A disgusting decision that one of his generals later characterized as, quote, a cyclone that solved about 500,000 of their problems. Fortunately, this strategy backfired dramatically on Khan. It caused everyone across East Pakistan to unite against him and vote for a man who actually assisted during the disaster, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The path to war. So, how did Khan respond to this? Did he gracefully transfer the presidential title? No, he actually decided to become a dictator. To put it very simply, instead, he imprisoned Mujib and began killing everyone in East Pakistan who didn't follow his orders. He initiated mass genocide and stated, quote, all we need to do is kill 3 million of them and the rest will eat out of our hands. So, that's exactly what he did. He began killing all Bengalis who opposed him. Naturally, this sparked a full-fledged civil war between East and West Pakistan, with India, who disliked Pakistan, jumping in to help East Pakistan defeat West Pakistan and become their own nation. However, if we're discussing countries joining the conflict, the US also entered and supported their ally, Pakistan. Nuclear standoff. Tensions escalated extremely high with US involvement because the US deployed a warship to the Bay of Bengal. However, this was no ordinary warship. It was a nuclear warship capable of destruction equivalent to 2,000 Hiroshima bombs. Even worse, the Soviets, who were allied with India, came into play in the Bay of Bengal as well, bringing their own nuclear warships to counter the US and protect India. This was a massive problem. We are literally looking at full-fledged nuclear warfare here. Nuclear weapons in any context in the situation between two countries could trigger complete nuclear breakdown between their allies. Neither of the two countries would cooperate. They moved closer to each other, and the Soviets and Americans communicated to each other that they would set the whole world on fire if the other country did not back down. Neither country was backing down. It was literally a game of chicken at this point. They moved closer and closer to each other and came just about to the brink of detonating the bombs. The world was only perhaps a day away from nuclear fallout. The miraculous resolution. But out of nowhere, back in East Pakistan, the East Pakistani resistance forces in the war achieved victory. They captured the main city Dhaka, which meant East Pakistan was now Bangladesh. The war was over. Luckily, this miracle would draw everyone involved with the war away from each other, and the US and Soviets departed, just days before absolute annihilation. Finally, after everything Bangladesh endured, it was all over. The broken nation. But unfortunately, this wouldn't be the end, because in reality, Bangladesh had just been struck by the world's biggest cyclone and then by massive genocide. They had nothing with which to establish a country, no political figures, no money, and devastated land. They were left with essentially nothing to start their nation, nothing but genocide and a cyclone's remains. What Bangladesh experienced in 1970 was nothing short of beyond horrifying. The lack of knowledge, the high tides, the storm surge and floods, the lack of help from everyone, and overall, complete isolation in their disaster. Historical significance. The Bhola Cyclone truly struck at the worst possible time. Even to this date, no single storm in history has even approached the death toll and destructiveness of the Bhola Cyclone. Because the land of Bangladesh was stripped entirely bare to its absolute core, it was completely torn apart by the cyclone. But perhaps Bangladesh was not just devastated and broken land. Instead, possibly it was new territory upon which to rebuild. What do you consider the most terrifying natural force? Many people instinctively believe it's water-related disasters. We share that assessment. That's precisely why we've compiled for you today an impressive collection of the largest waves from terrifying storms that were captured on camera. If you're prepared to be amazed, and in some places even frightened, then subscribe to the channel, like this video, and immediately begin watching. Regardless of a ship's size, nothing and no one can withstand a powerful storm. And again, no matter how solid a platform's foundation, no matter how robust its construction, nothing created by human hands can stand against merciless natural elements. A massive vessel weighing several tens of thousands of tons, waves rocket so effortlessly, as if it were a child's paper boat. Here's perfect demonstration that we are no match for nature. A ship alone cannot withstand a storm, but if there's a competent crew aboard the vessel under the leadership of a capable captain, then they can still manage to survive. While waves, one after another, attempt to knock it into the water and destroy it to its foundation, it stands firmly and confidently because it needs to illuminate the path for sailors. The ship had already approached the shore when a strong storm caught up with it. Wind speed during it reached 100 kilometers per hour. Large waves covered the ship, mercilessly throwing it against the rocks. Naturally, the elements gained the upper hand and split the ship into two parts. It's fortunate that rescuers were already flying in by helicopter to save at least the crew. Water is lifted by the wind and strikes the rocks, creating an amazingly beautiful water column that is not dangerous, but can certainly impress, can it? Sailors who were able to pass through strong storms and stand firm despite fear and danger can be considered true heroes of our time and real daredevils. After such moments, I honestly lose my desire to travel. Do you? Ships are dangerous not only in the open sea, but also near the shore. Here the elements are, of course, weaker, but they can still easily damage a vessel here too. This looks more like footage from a post-apocalyptic movie than something that could happen in real life, but this is the reality of those brave people who are courageous enough to go on voyages. This is what an unlucky day means. You plan a vacation in advance, spend a serious amount of money, arrive, and instead of rest, you suddenly get dangerous storm season. If a ship gets a hole and starts going down, the only chance for the crew is a helicopter. On it, of course, only people can fly away. The cargo will naturally end up at the bottom. Flooding is a merciless natural phenomenon that sweeps away entire high-rise buildings, takes lives, and destroys everything in its path indiscriminately. Strong waves, dangerous storms, sudden whirlpools, and unpredictable vortices. This is what ship crews periodically fight against when they go on long voyages. For us, a ship is an unmovable machine that cannot be broken or damaged, but for the water element, it's just a light toy. Bridges need to be built to last, and their fastenings should be the strongest and most reliable possible. Everything that's not made conscientiously gets swept away in a storm within the first seconds. If you find yourself in a storm during freezing weather, then after it ends, the deck will turn into a real skating rink, and it, by the way, is no less dangerous than the storm itself. Rescuers are people who deserve standing ovations, salary raises, and respect because they save others while risking their own health. When they wanted to celebrate a birthday on a yacht at sea under the bright sun, but the weather had other plans. The Pearl River in China overflowed its banks and flooded nearby areas with water. Everything ended without casualties, but people were thoroughly frightened. Particularly dangerous water areas can only be overcome by experienced captains who have managed to get out of more than one predicament. If flooding happens, the winner is the one who bought a boat, not an expensive car. I used to think that the expression, "the wind will blow you away," was slightly exaggerated, but now I understand that there are winds that can easily lift not only a person into the air. Whoever filmed these shots is either fearless or desperate. I would have run with all my might upon seeing the approaching water flow, rather than filming for the archives. Incredible footage, isn't it? We always try to select the best content for you. Even looking at such a storm is scary. I absolutely cannot imagine what those who found themselves in the very epicenter of the storm feel. These people possess incredible courage. Waves cover the deck of a cargo ship, but it still confidently moves forward. And it's not about the reliability of the vessel, no. The reason is the bravery and courage of the sailors. Floating oil platforms are built so strong that they can withstand even the most terrible storms, the biggest waves, and the most unpredictable natural phenomena. But even they sometimes cannot stand against Mother Nature. This liner was not destined to reach the shore intact and safe. The average wind speed during a storm exceeds 25 meters per second, and during particularly strong storms reaches even 30. Just imagine this force and power. The average wave height during a storm is 7 to 8 meters. That's the height of a 9-story building. The camera, of course, doesn't convey the horror that brave sailors witness. If not all solid, seemingly reliable metal ships can worthily withstand storms, then what can be said about ancient wooden ships? How did they even cross seas and oceans? No matter how dangerous the waves are, watching natural grandeur through a screen in warmth and safety is pure pleasure. It's good to be inside a ship during a terrible storm, but there are situations when the crew has to be on deck at the risk of their own lives. There are things that are absolutely impossible to believe. It's amazing how such things can even happen. Now that's courage. Surviving a storm on such a small liner is something out of the realm of fantasy. We all love calm seas, smooth waters, and sunny weather. However, the elements are not always in a good mood. Apparently. Before us is a storm that has just begun to form. The wind is gradually gaining momentum, becoming faster and faster, and the waves are getting higher and higher every minute. How little our plans depend on us. People wanted to peacefully have lunch while enjoying the beautiful sea through panoramic windows, but unexpectedly for everyone, an unusually strong storm occurred, which broke the glass and sent its waves directly at people. The fishing vessel was already returning to shore when the water around began to rage. We can only hope that the fishermen on it are experienced and will be able to reach the bay safely. Apparently, whoever built this fashionable mansion in such a place was sure that the weather there would always be in good spirits. How wrong he was. Such footage gives you goosebumps even through the screen. The ship is going down along with all its expensive cargo, although in moments when your life hangs by a thread, you think about such things last. If a storm happens, then people working on offshore oil platforms have nothing left to do but wait for it to end. During a storm, no one returns home on such days. This wave is definitely bigger than the average statistical wave during a storm. Its height definitely exceeds 8 meters. I wouldn't want to see it in person. Fear there probably chills you to the bone. A strong wave hit a tanker that was transporting cargo. It immediately began to rock so violently that it seemed like it was about to overturn, but fortunately it still managed to stay afloat. Now that's power nothing can be opposed to such pressure and force. While everyone caught in the storm tries to run as far away as possible in fear, these brave rescuers sail into its very epicenter to save those who cannot get out on their own. This old fishing vessel is still staying afloat, but this won't last very long because waves are covering it one after another. Soon they will plunge it into the depths. Now I understand why packages from China take so long to arrive, and some don't arrive at all. Just look at what hurricane conditions cargo ships sometimes have to overcome. If you felt like switching channels, don't rush. The real action is about to begin. These guys won't get out dry. These waves don't just hit the bridge, no. Nature seems to be creating an impressive picture. Not a bad protection system. Who knows? Maybe in the near future humanity will be able to handle any storm. There's something to be said for Eastern religions. This person, even facing death, not only doesn't experience fear, he doesn't even worry, calmly returning home. A strong storm began. Powerful water flows turned the beautiful waterfront and familiar city roads into a continuous body of water. It's good that no one thought to take a walk in such weather. The strong storm brought not only high waves and wind that swept away deck chairs and beach umbrellas, but also a tornado that moves very quickly through the city. While admiring the power of the water element, you need to be prepared and remember that it can manifest its power on land too. The engine on the tourist boat completely died. People were rescued from it, but the vessel itself was smashed to smithereens. I don't even know what scares me more, a powerful storm from which there's no hiding or a whirlpool that draws into itself even the largest ships. Captivating spectacle, isn't it? This wave is so big and frightening that it seems like a terrible monster that's about to swallow you forever. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you in the next videos. Take care.